Thank you very much. So I'm joined with Rick Rheingans, who's the chair of the Appalachian State University Sustainable Development Department, and also Dr. Vachel Miller, who is the director of the Leadership and Educational Studies Master's Degree Program in the College of Education. And we're here to give a perspective about sustainability, education, and efforts at the local level, at Appalachian State, and the region, and the UNC system. And I'd first like to say that we do a lot. There are certainly a lot of gaps that exist. I think this institution, I know this institution was originally designed kind of without Earth education in mind. So we adapt. We try to be resilient. I know also that our peers across the UNC system are doing a lot of great things as well in this Earth education space and education for sustainability. There's examples of just about everything that we've seen this afternoon and this morning being integrated in the classroom, which is great. Here at Appalachian State, our strengths lie in the academic part of sustainability. We have some really old programs that focus on these issues. We've been teaching students about sustainability before the S word has kind of came into the lexicon. Started with Earth studies many years ago in the late 70s. This is a very beautiful place for those of you that are not here, where it's a mountain community, and there's a lot of very clean waterways in our community. And I think that this area really attracts a certain type of person, a person who cares about these issues, people that appreciate beauty and respect the environment. We're headwaters of the Mississippi River, the New River, right here in our community, some of the cleanest water in the world. And so I think we have a great sense of urgency to protect it and the land that's around it. So with that said, I know that a lot of faculty and staff and students are definitely attracted to this area because of its innate beauty. It's also a mountain community, traditionally very poor. We're in western North Carolina, northwestern North Carolina, where in the southern Appalachian Mountains, where people have struggled for many years. It's hard to make a living here. It was hard to make a living here 1,000 years ago, and it's difficult to make a living here now for different reasons. As a result, many of the people that live here have learned to be extremely resilient. They're thrifty by nature and conservative in the way that we'd like for people to be conservative. And so I think that that's left an impact on this campus community, and it's really kind of helped guide us over the years. So we're proud to be leaders in sustainability education. There's a lot more we can do. We found that students are attracted to our campus because of our sustainability efforts. So we're faculty and some staff, but we could always do better, and we strive to do better. So I'd like to, I'm going to ask our panelists a couple of questions throughout this panel. And I'm going to start with Dr. Rheingans. So Rick, can you give us an overview of the Sustainable Development Department and how it contributes to Earth education? And it could also give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about agroecology.
Thanks, Lee. I'm actually going to answer Lee's question, but I also want to make sure that we take this opportunity to talk about our Appalachian experience and how it relates to the earlier conversations about the academy in general, because I think there's a lot of things that we struggle with that are very much generalizable, and so it's not just talking about us here, but talking about broader issues. And so I'm incredibly fortunate to be part of one of the oldest sustainable development programs, and now a department in the country. So it's over 20 years old and in earlier versions under other names. And what makes it unique compared to other departments, I think, is its interdisciplinarity. So we have people with training in ecology and anthropology, political science, forestry, animal sciences, geography. And I think that's actually a really important comment about academia as a whole. And I think Josh was just making this comment earlier about what a challenge it is within the academy to expect the academy to evolve when we still really rely on disciplines. And we're incredibly fortunate as a department that we have this interdisciplinarity. And but it also happens, we're fortunate because we're in a university where other departments have elements of sustainability, right? So that's, and I think there's a creative tension there that happens. And so we rely on having business and anthropology and geography, having segments or subsections within their departments who are focusing on sustainability issues. But it's important to also have units that are able to really integrate these issues. And I think what it allows us to do is to do really kind of big interdisciplinarity around sustainability issues. And what I mean by that is have conversations that bridge a broad range of disciplines. So have people whose trainees in literature talk to ecologists or to foresters, and not just have people in different disciplines within business talk about kind of a small interdisciplinarity. And so I think that connection, that it's important to have a place where there really is interdisciplinary and to be able to connect to departments that are fundamentally disciplinary. The other thing that I just want to say, so that's one of our key elements. The other thing that I think that also distinguishes our department, and I hope one day will also distinguish what we as Appalachian State University can do, is a true commitment to transformational change among our students. Our Appalachian's mission states, because our mission statement starts out is that the Appalachian State University prepares students to lead purposeful lives as engaged global citizens who understand their responsibilities in creating a sustainable future. And I really believe that our faculty within our department and our students are absolutely committed to that mission. I think sometimes, like mission statements, though, that's not always shared by everybody. And some people don't even know that that's necessarily the mission, or don't like it, but don't necessarily. But I think one of the things that we as a department are fortunate for is to have a true embrace by faculty and students of that mission. And the last thing I just would say is as you were saying, is Appalachian State University is although it hasn't always been about sustainability, it's always been about place. It's always been connected to its community, but its physical community and its ecological setting. And that it creates an opportunity and a responsibility. I think one of our strengths as a department and one of our great opportunities as a university is to partner with local organizations, communities. We have colleagues who work with Blue Ridge Women in Agriculture, which is an amazing organization that supports local agriculture, with the Agriculture Extension Service, which we're really fortunate to have a very progressive group. So I think having those pieces is really important. But I think it does give us this lens about how do we make education more responsive to the real needs around sustainability, and not just maybe I'll stop there.
Right. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of need in our community, in our region, and our faculty and students are known for getting out and being involved with active learning projects, and it's very exciting. You know, we have some long-standing examples like you've described, where we've been teaching our students about sustainability, another of which is our appropriate technology degree programs, sustainable technology, going back into, again, actually this Earth Studies, one of the former names that we called these tracks, these foci, kind of split at one point, and one became sustainable development, one became appropriate technology, and they're both alive and well and thriving at the moment, and have hundreds, if not thousands, of graduates that are out doing great things in the community. And we're also known for just actively engaging. That's one of our our shining points. I'd like to ask Vachel a question because it's another area that I think is a strong contributor to sustainability, but maybe it's a lesser known contributor on campus and just this field in general, but I think that it's extremely important. So could you talk about educational leadership's role in Earth education? And could you also describe what you're calling apocalyptic leadership?
Yeah, in a sense, this is the same question that maybe drew Eric and Worldwatch. How do we make education anew for the times we live in and for the times we're approaching? And this question wasn't just mine. It grew out of a community of students we were working with. My friend Susan Reed is here. It was her question. It was a number of us were asking this question: what does educational leadership need to look like? Because we realize that educational institutions are very conservative, and educational leadership is a very conservative kind of field about status quo preservation, what people are used to seeing. And it's not terribly responsive to the changes. So we said, what does it need to look like? And we borrowed this idea of apocalyptic leadership from a guy in Texas named Robert Jensen. And our idea in using the term apocalyptic leadership was not leadership that brings us closer to the end of the world, but leadership, what Jensen argues, and we've adopted this idea of teaching and leadership that looks our situation square in the face, that doesn't turn away from the catastrophes we're facing, that looks at climate disruption in a world spinning out of balance in the face, and yet maintains a stance of resilience, maintains a stance of hope amid the loss. And a lot of, in working on this book, and maybe Eric and Worldwatch folks found the same thing, you kind of work on a book because you don't know the answer and you're trying to get a lot of people together to think together. And one of the ideas that came out of this is that it needs to be about our embodied stories of maintaining hope and possibility amid facing loss. And so I came down in the end to think about some things that apocalyptic leaders do, and it ends up to be very much, it's very affirming to hear what I've heard today, because it says maybe we were on the right track. What apocalyptic leaders do: question the complicity of educational institutions in sustaining an unsustainable mode of living, challenging traditions, structures, and narratives of social exclusion and ecological disconnection, creating experiential learning, the kinds of things that you and Rick do, experiential learning that reconnects us with nature and invokes passionate commitment to well-being, employs contemplative, arts-based, embodied pedagogies to build resilience and compassion and connection, slows us down to open us up, cultivates the creative and entrepreneurial savvy needed to create collaborative innovations, and speaks with a first-person vulnerability about the embodied and spiritual experience of trying to enact more sustainable teaching and learning, and affirms our capacity to find a way through even when there's no way out. And I guess for us, the apocalyptic part was saying there's a recognition now that there is no way out of many of these global predicaments we're facing, but that we walk the no way out together and find our way through, even then.
So let me ask you this about leadership for really both of you, going off script here a little bit. So do you see many leadership opportunities in both of your programs for students?
Yeah, actually, it's Scott's question kind of helped kind of drive that. I think there is, actually, not just as an opportunity. I think there's an incredible need, and one of the reasons I try to go back and read that mission of the university is because it's not just suggests, it really clearly states a responsibility to students to teach them those skills, to give them those opportunities. And I think there's a lot of opportunity both to do those things, to pick up those skills, but also to try to participate in the transformation of the university. And part of that means holding the university, helping hold, walking together with others, to help hold the university responsible to that ideal of creating students who really can be global stewards and be global citizens, because it's a hard thing to do, and it's a great aspirational goal right now. But so I think there's a lot of ways to, and that can be done by being an example, by creating an example of how you create a small change, whether it's within your dorm, within your club, within the community. But the other one is also by kind of being aspirational and trying to push the university to do more. So I think there's a great, again, not just an opportunity for leadership, I think there's an absolute need, because that's the demand that shifts how the university functions. That might shift it.
Yeah, I think we do, Lee, but maybe we don't do enough. And I'm speaking about my program. I think one of the things I want to do in the coming years is try to live up to the stuff I write about, because I find that it's easier to write about it than to do it in my own program. Because doing it in my own program, much like our friend from Vermont talked about, requires building some consensus that this is important for all of us, and we haven't had those kind of conversations. So I think our program provides lots of leadership opportunities for students in conventional ways that are all important, but not necessarily in ways that are framed in terms of the larger changes we need to be making. We haven't framed our higher education program in terms of looking at educational institutions, community colleges, technical training, universities, within an ecological context. You know, we're good on the social justice side. We haven't really converted that, and the prison examples are fantastic and inspiring about where those intersections could be that I had never thought of, and many of our students have never thought of. So I think we need to do more to expand the conventional leadership opportunities into more transformative opportunities by reframing them and connecting them the way kind of many of the things we've heard here today.
Right. You know, Eric was talking about taking children out into the woods and letting them play and letting them get dirty and letting them get splinters, and I think that's how I grew up, and that's how I tried to raise my son, and you know, I wish that for every child. It's not always very easy to do, and it made me think about student leaders on our campus. Now that I'm in this role as University Sustainability Director, no longer really in the classroom as much, I have the opportunity to work with a lot of students that are natural leaders. And I wish that I could pull them out of the classroom and keep them out of the classroom to work with us to continue to lead, to do this work on campus, because I think they're learning more in many ways. And this may be a flip style, I don't really know, you know, what you call it, but you know, I'm, you know, constantly having to wait for them to get out of class or you know, finish a project, and especially this time of year when it's, you know, the end of the semester and everybody's really busy. But there's so many leadership opportunities for students on these university and college campuses, and it takes people like us to, you know, help plug them into those roles.
Well, it's reminding me that in many of our advising conversations, we're often going through a checklist of what courses do you need to graduate and all that kind of thing, rather than asking the question, what change do you want to make during your time here? And then how could we help you do that? And who can we connect you with? And et cetera. We don't really frame it that way of thinking of the students first as a change agent, where all their work is across this campus into the community, rather than as the consumer of our program.
Right.
I just want to add, because I feel like we're talking about how our role is to enable students to create this change, which actually kind of, I think, shifts responsibility to them in a way that I'm not fully comfortable with, actually, because because it kind of sounds like it's okay with us to be all right with our disciplines. It's okay with us to accept the kind of incentive structures that we get within our disciplines and within departments. And I think it's just important for us I mean, it's our role as faculty to take on those questions. And it may be that it's a long time before disciplines disappear, but I mean, as examples, our department's rewriting our tenure and promotion guidelines. Come across the problem is like, how do you value a first authored or a sole authored publication compared to a collaboration where you might be listed as a part of a group? But we decided, actually, we should incentivize collaboration. We should not create a false kind of prioritization of sole author journals. Second thing is, should you give a better, what counts as impact? Is it the impact factor of the journal you publish in? Or is it whether somebody used it to change their life? And I think those are things that not only are they things that we could do, it's things that we have a responsibility to do. And we're not going to, disciplines may not go away, but there's ways that we can kind of reify them and that we can de-incentivize them or create incentives for working across rather than for huddling within. And so I think that's, but I just want to make sure it's clear that we've got that responsibility. That's what we're.
Absolutely. And I think we've got a responsibility to model the work as well, because I think a lot of faculty take comfort in being in a corner complaining about what the administration is doing, or complaining about what's going on, or complaining about what's not going on. And even this year, what I've tried to do more of, just to push myself, is, okay, you do it. So in January with a colleague, we had an event in our College of Education called Teach Justice, Teach Love. And we invited, Lee, you came over, and different resource people came over from across the campus to say, how can education be about love and justice? What are all the resources here and connecting students with that? Well, we took initiative to organize that. And it's that kind of thing that where we have to also model for our students, yeah, we're doing this too, and we're in this together.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to add one more too. I think it's also there are great examples. I think Laura had some great examples about when education, at least around agriculture, worked better. And I think a lot of it had to do with being more connected to producers, being more connected to farmers and communities. And I think looking at ways that we're not just sitting in a community, but actually how can we contribute in tangible ways to the community, to its economy, to its institutions. And I'm just thinking, since Lee did give me an open to plug our agroecology program earlier, there's a couple things that over the next couple of days, we're doing a training for local poultry producers on small-scale poultry processing, which is being done in collaboration with the local ag extension, county ag extension office. We're working with Lee's office on doing a new community garden that's going to highlight seed saving and preservation of local varieties. That's being done. And we're starting a low-impact logging operation out at the farm that the university maintains and where we do a lot of work that's trying to create a local market for locally sustainably produced wood products. And so those are all places where we're trying to contribute to a shared economy and not just study it, but be a part of it.
Great. I'd like to ask sustainability professionals such as yourselves questions. I'd like to know how you talk about people that don't have the same kind of level of sustainability literacy as yourselves. So, the question is, how do you inspire students, faculty, staff, community members? How do you inspire those people that don't necessarily have an interest or don't feel connected to these issues?
I'll start. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways, and it depends on who that person is. And I think one of the unique things about that question in Boone is that there's a long history of underlying shared values that are really a part of sustainability, but the narratives have diverged. And so you talk to people who help support our department financially, or people who are in the communities who will talk about being frugal, about being mindful of the resources that they have, about being careful with the land and the traditions that have been passed on to them, and may not look for the word sustainability or sustainable development as a part of talking about it, but the values are shared. And so I think one of the first ways to do that is to listen, and listen for those shared values and find the place where you do connect with people. And oftentimes it has to be with a sense of their community, a sense of their children, a sense of their future. And I think that's otherwise these words, sustainability, that's our invented narrative. I mean, it's useful for us, but it means less to others. So.
Absolutely. I think, too, is expanding the surface area of the concept, of sustainability to give people more access to it. We were talking yesterday in the College of Education, Michael and Eric came over, and we were talking about what does it mean for a College of Education to do Earth education, to do sustainability work. And we realized that, well, our training of school counselors, our training of parent educators, our early childhood work, all of that has a justice dimension, a peace dimension, a wellness dimension that many of us do and are passionate about it, but haven't framed it or haven't thought about it in terms of sustainability. So it's a very similar thing. I think it's connecting to what brought us to the work, what good and beautiful thing brought us to the work we do, and there's probably something in there that connects to this bigger good and beautiful thing that we all see in terms of Earth education and sustainability education, but it hadn't had that name, and we don't want to try to colonize that for people. We don't want to try to impose that name on them and bring them closer to our definition of what it should be, but I think to create more surface area that's inclusive so that people can see, oh, what I do counts too. What I do matters to this larger effort too, and that I think can energize people in a different way.
Right. So I'm going to go off script again because I was inspired by what you just said, your remarks. I'm also fascinated by hearing people's stories, and especially how they came to do this work and be extremely passionate about this work. So I'm sure that each of your stories, you could spend days and days, explaining and describing your stories. But if you could kind of go back in your mind and think of something that was transformative, impactful when you were young, that maybe kind of nudged you in the direction of being an advocate for the earth and all life.
It reminds me this morning, Eric talked yesterday about his child, so I feel a little licensed to talk about this morning my daughter went missing, my 12-year-old daughter. She disappeared from the house. I was actually watching you all on my computer sitting at home, and we said, where's Cedra? Where did she go? And all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, she showed up carrying a big plastic bag with full of garbage and an old tire, and she was all muddy, and she said, well, I've just been in the woods cleaning up. And she just appeared, and I thought, wow, okay, this is, she's got this. She's learned this. And when I think back to me, I grew up in North Dakota. I grew up out there in a place where, land and sky meet 360 degrees, and it was an environment that was the interface, the human-natural interface was raw, and it was right there all the time. And I just really got a sense there. You could know when land had been disturbed, and you could see the encroachment, and you felt much more surrounded by nature, but much more, it was also a place where nature really had awesome power to kill you. And it's a ferocious and beautiful place, the Northern Plains. And that just gave me this sense of quiet and deep looking that has stayed with me, that I'm always kind of trying to find that place again, and a sense of, also being in a place, growing up in a place where you knew that native peoples had been displaced, and you saw that they'd been put in places where their cultures were now on a destructive path, and they were trying to revitalize that, but that was really hard because of what had benefited my families a couple generations before. And so there was that awareness that this land really isn't ours, and we're trying to learn how to be here in a different way that other people knew, but we pushed them away. And there was that visceral sense of, yeah, this is this place I grew up in.
So I was hoping that by having Vachel go first, I'd figure out which episode I would use, but I'll do two. And I think part of it's because this both of the ecological and the social dimensions of sustainability that they kind of have both places. And so I grew up in the Midwest in Wisconsin, but in a place where, as far as you could look, there were townhouses and people's backyards and not much sky meeting horizon. But I did get to go for once a year to northern Wisconsin and be on a lake. That became my sense of place. And it really, actually, in coming to Appalachian for me was about trying to reconnect with that sense of place. And I think we all have it. We have there's a landscape that calls us, that resonates with us. And so that does that in a way. But there's the place I think that really gave me a deeper commitment to it. So as an undergrad, I went to Nicaragua in the mid-1980s while the US government was carrying out a war there. And I met community after community where people had very little resources, but were committed to finding solutions together. And I actually lived with a family where two of the older brothers went off every Monday morning as they were agronomists. They went off, one worked with tobacco farmers, one worked with basic grain farmers. They went off to basically the war frontier with a gun over their shoulders because they really wanted to enable those farmers to be productive and to have a livelihood. And that connection to them and their place was really impactful for me. But I think this, again, I think it's not just about your sense of ecological place and the importance of nature, but it's this people's connectedness to it. So.
Lee, could I just say a little bit more? Just two other things. Just, when you get in conversation, you start thinking about more things. I went to college at a college called St. John's University in Minnesota, and it's a Benedictine monastery, a place where people are incredibly dedicated to place and self-sufficiency. The monastery made its own bread, and they restored the tall grass prairie that was around that. There was a potter there who is a good friend, Richard Brezhnev, who all his materials came from that place. And so there was this long tradition, a monastic spiritual tradition, that said this is what we believe in. And nothing was sort of intentionally inculcated, but it was the whole milieu. It was just there, that these are the values you learn by being with us. That was that. And then the international experiences. I just spent the year in Ethiopia and last year and had a lot of experiences about resilience and endurance, and people who at some level are not really obsessing very much about climate change, even though there's incredible effects. Malaria is creeping up the mountains, their growing seasons are going haywire because of changing rainfall patterns, but it's not really in the collective conversation because they just go on. It's a culture of resilience. They've had a hard life, they'll continue to find a way through. And that's inspiring in a different way. Some years ago, I was in Bangladesh, and I asked someone, I said, we know that you're going to lose a lot of land here as the seas increase. Do you think about that? Do you worry about that? What are you going to do? And he said, well, we'll just pick up our schools and move to higher ground. We can pick up and move a school in about half a day. We'll adapt. And so there's a sense of I think it's not naivete. It's a sense again of that kind of cultural resilience that's inspiring, and people who say we've been here, we will be here, we will find a way. And so those international experiences also give you great hope, I think, for what we can do.
Thank you. For myself, it was, I grew up largely as an only child, and this unstructured time in nature had a profound impact that I didn't even realize. Really long walks on the beach near where I grew up, spending hours in the woods, just being curious. Maybe I was born curious, I think I was, but that probably had a lot to do with it. My mother loved nature. My grandfather was a birder. I know that those had impacts. So we share those interests with our children, and they remember, and it plants seeds. To add to that, I came to the mountains to go to college, thinking I was going to go into marketing. And, and ended up studying natural science. And it was a professor that really inspired me. And we have the opportunity to do that all the time. And I think it's a beautiful thing. It's one of the biggest gifts that I receive from this work that we do, transforming lives. And I just feel really blessed to be, in this situation where I can, have that kind of an impact. But, we have to continue to do this work and encourage our colleagues to, do the same and help their students connect to what they really care about. When I got to college, I realized I didn't care about marketing. I realize now that I would greatly benefit from knowing a lot about it. So another question I have for you both is, for you right now in your work that you're doing on a university campus of about 18,000 students, part of a public system, 17 universities, what's the largest barrier that you're currently dealing with that prevents you from really soaring, if you will?
I'll jump in. And I think it's not unique to our university, our state university system, but it's certainly prevalent here, is that the system of incentives do not align with our stated objectives, I think. And so I think the way we fund departments, the way what kind of activities we fund aren't responsive to, they don't incentivize the activities that we say we prioritize or the objectives that we prioritize. In the same way, the systems of accountability, so the way assessment is done, what our metrics are for considering ourselves successful, do not align with what we think our impact should be. So if the purpose of the university is to both create students that do this or to make contributions to communities, where's that in our guidelines for tenure promotion? Where's that in our accountability to the budgets that get put out? So where is how much of the university budget goes to interdisciplinary work? And I think that misalignment between stated goals and objectives, which I think are genuinely shared, and the system of accountability and incentives is just completely is often disconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the two words that came to my mind were professionalism and accountability. in the sense of professionalism, in education, we have an idea that that to be professional is about fulfilling state standards, and we have state standards that give little attention to all of the issues we've been talking about today, where the learning objective is not about making the earth a more habitable place. And we don't have the larger frames. We have a narrow professionalism, a narrow sense of professionalism, a narrow sense of what our institutions do and what our jobs are. So I think it's breaking out of a narrow professionalism into to use the term today, an earth-centric professionalism. And that's where the accountability conversation comes in. I mean, we're lucky, and Appalachian has made a breakthrough, I think, as a university, to name that its purpose is creating a just and sustainable future. That's a huge breakthrough at an institutional level. But are the incentives and the accountability there for each department, for each program to create a just and sustainable future? How are we doing it? How are you doing it? How is this program doing it? How are we doing it together? We haven't taken that institutional vision and brought it down into the structures of operation at a departmental level to say, what are we all doing to contribute to this? And we get stuck in our narrow professionalism. And that's, I think, a problem.
I agree, kind of cart before the horse a little bit. It's been great, though, having that language in our strategic plan, and it's helped me tremendously in my work on this campus, and I know it's helped you all as well, and your bosses are paying more attention to sustainability, which I think is great. One last question for you both, and then I'll give you the opportunity to add something if you would like. I'm also interested in talking about hope, always. And so I'm really interested. I would like to know what gives you hope and inspires you to keep doing this work that you do.
So I confess that Lee told us that question before, so I had a chance to think about that one. And so the power of community. And I think that comes in a couple of ways. I'm actually relatively new, I'm very new to Appalachian State. And finding a department faculty that has a shared mission, has a real commitment to each other, that sense of community, having students who share that commitment and are dedicated to that sense of community, being a part of a broader community, having community partners that we work with, those things they're incredibly powerful in and of themselves. I think they give us those examples that help feed our sense of purpose, our sense of accomplishment. They also provide great examples, I think, to others. I think it's particularly important in this time. I think we live in a time where there are threats to our ecology, our economy, social justice that are not just from the national government, but from all sorts of places. And not that we can take our eyes off of that, but sometimes it's really important to ground ourselves in that power of community and use that as a point to step off from moving forward. So I think it's a useful strategy, but it's also a good place to be at home.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think having this event here was a moment of hope. It's wow, Worldwatch came here to launch this book. That's exciting, and we're part of a larger conversation. Lee has had an idea that inspires a lot of hope in me of bringing together universities in different parts of the world that are interested in sustainability education for integrative conversations and developing leadership, developing communities of practice that are translocal. And how do we connect folks who have deep understanding of indigenous knowledge in Peru with folks who have deep understanding of racial justice in South Africa, and people who are all experimenting with alternative energy and all sorts of positive, progressive work across, so that how does this university become a node in larger networks? So there's both the networks in the community here on campus, that whenever you get feeling a little bit down, you just go to a sustainability council meeting and you find out that someone's doing something that, oh, I never thought of that, or that's possible, and that gives you a little more juice for the next day. And then to think about a global network of people who are doing this, that brings a lot of hope too. So there's plenty of energy to be found all across campus.
It gives me hope to know you both are here doing this work with us. Is there anything that you would like to add, kind of parting thoughts? Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. So I've been asked to give some parting thoughts, and so I'd like to thank everyone, again, the millions that are logged in watching us, and everyone that sacrificed time in their day to participate in this event. I want to thank Eric and Gael and the team from the Worldwatch Institute, who've been great to work with, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you better and seeing your face after working with you for many months. I look forward to future and deeper collaborations with the Worldwatch Institute. Thank you for participating in Earth education. Thank you for connecting. And I really want to encourage everyone to connect to these issues, to connect to your communities, to connect to yourselves, your loved ones, and connect to the earth. I'm going to leave you with another indigenous quote from the Cherokee people. Individually and collectively, people possess an extraordinary ability to face down adversity and continue moving forward. And this work that we're calling Earth Education is definitely a step forward in the right direction. So I encourage you all to go outside a lot and often and run around or walk or crawl or whatever you can do. Be creative, play with your community, play with your friends and loved ones. Learn deeply about the issues that you care about and learn more about the issues that you don't know about. And cooperate with everyone that you can find, because we don't have a lot of time. We obviously have a great sense of urgency. Those speakers that gifted us with their time, we need to capitalize on our collective knowledge and experiences. So take what we've learned and let's all move forward. Thank you very much.